or he's been here for our lectureship. He's helped us out a number of times in our ministries here, and so we're really grateful to have Bob back with us. For those of you who don't know, he's been married to his wife Cheryl. I think it's going on 31 years. 31 years. 41?
I know I only look 35.
Okay, that's why I asked you ahead of time. But anyway,
41.
Okay, that's a good mark. So
get married at 15 and it still works.
yeah. Anyway, he is a great advocate for the Sunset Bible Institute, and does a great work for them. He works with their Sunset Academy for Leadership Training. And so he's got a wealth of knowledge, especially when it comes down to things like teaching. And this is kind of in his wheelhouse. And so Bob is going to be sharing with us this evening, and then tomorrow morning at 8:30 we'll have a continental breakfast. Then at 9 o'clock we'll start with classes, and we'll go to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a lunch break in between and some breaks as well. So anyway, without me taking up any more of your time, brother.
Okay, thanks. Well, good evening. Welcome to Boise. You know, we were supposed to do this workshop in 2020, and that didn't happen. And so getting it rescheduled was quite the challenge, but I'm glad it's worked out. I'm thankful to be here, and I'm thankful you're here. I didn't realize we'd have this many, so that's encouraging to me and exciting, because I think it's going to be fun. Some of the stuff we're going to be talking about, the things that we're going to do. We'll probably start off telling you a little bit about what to expect over the weekend. And then there are going to be a number of different exercises. I'm going to share some information, but you're going to be doing some different things. Primarily tomorrow, you'll be doing a lot, working in your groups, deciding on a number of different things that will help in developing leadership stuff. The purpose of this class is to really talk about adult education. How do you teach adults? The principles that we're going to look at are pretty much the same really across the board, but not all teaching is the same, because not everyone's the same kind of learner. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through tonight. But here's a little bit of the plan for the weekend. Tonight we're going to talk about effective teaching. What is it that makes up effective teaching, and how can we know that we are teaching effectively? And so we'll talk about that to start with tonight. And then tomorrow, we're going to kind of begin today talking about how do you inspire passion? How do you have passion as a teacher? And how do you inspire passion in those that you're teaching? And then, to me, it's the great missing link of most of our classes and sermons as well, oftentimes, is that making application. And the thing we'll talk about tomorrow, and that you'll actually be doing, is it's not just about telling people what to do, but how do they do it? You know, oftentimes we'll say, well, the scripture says do this. Well, I get that. Be angry and do not sin. I got a friend that says I got half of that right. And the idea is how do I do that? You know, it's one thing to tell people you can be angry but don't sin, but how do I do that? And so tomorrow we're going to talk about the how, not just the what. And so we'll deal with that in making application. We're going to spend some time talking about principles of adult learning. And so we'll do that right before the lunch break. And then we're going to talk about 8 steps of design. This was done by Jane Vella, and the material that I share with you was developed by her and the Global Learning Partners. And so we'll talk about that and how that works for developing the class. And then we're going to close out by talking about what's called the 4 A's: anchor, add, apply, and away. And this will be ultimately what you will take away with you from this workshop, and that you'll be able to do as you go into teaching a class. And so those are the things we're going to look at. So here's where we're going to start. To me, I get this. I do workshops all across the country, and I do leadership workshops. And one of the first questions that I ask, especially when a congregation is thinking about creating a vision, is what are your greatest needs? And consistently, every single congregation at some point is going to say, we need teachers. And I'm like, it's very interesting to me that we have that struggle. And yet I know why, because oftentimes when somebody volunteers to teach a class, they know they're signing up until Jesus returns or they die. And they just don't want to do that. And so they're like, no, I don't want to teach. And so you've got some people that end up teaching the same class forever. And they get so tired of it. So I'd like for you to think for just a moment, and at your tables, I'd like for you to discuss, make what you consider to be your top 3 reasons why people do not want to teach. Why is it that people do not want to teach? There are a lot of reasons. So at your tables, I want you to talk about it and give you all 4 or 5 minutes, however long you need. But list what you would consider to be your top 3 reasons why someone doesn't want to teach. Now, there's a second part here. The second part is, what's the solution? What would be the solution or solutions, if you will, to overcome the reasons that you listed? What would it take to solve that situation? So you all get started. Talk about that. I'm going to kind of make a list here on the whiteboard as we go through the stuff. But you all talk at your tables, and then we're going to share once you get finished with that.
I feel like a lot of people are afraid of description that says teachers will be held to a higher account.
That's a good point.
What do you guys been thinking? I don't know. The solution to that is probably offering more grace. So they won't be so afraid.
I think what he said about feeling like it's a commitment you can't get
Yeah.
My feeling is that everybody would do a little. You don't have to do all. That's right. So I guess the solution is that's a solution. Everybody doesn't. Right. For somebody
I think they like teaching, especially in older age group, just from a lack of preparation. So I think by doing like things like this are helpful, but also to facilitate better potential teachers. So if we're asking people to do something, we should give them the tools to succeed. Because I feel like people kind of deer in the headlights when they have to teach for understandable reasons.
Well, a lot of people are very afraid of public speaking
Yes,
in
that
general.
is one of the top phobias.
Yeah. Especially if you're younger and just teaching people like that was definitely, I could see that being a problem.
You don't know where to start.
So you would say they fear lack of preparation, so the solution is ensure
And similar to the stricter judgment kind of idea, know that it's okay if you mess up.
well, the older people will say, listen to me.
Yeah.
That's what
I
happens.
bet. Yeah.
How are you? I'm good. Glad you showed up. They need some help.
The younger generation, there's less and less opportunities for experience. There's not as many occasions in church. There's not as many going to church. There's not as many even just people having people in your home. These things are happening here, so people don't know how to talk to people. It's a communication problem, not just a teacher.
So if people are communicating as much as they used to, I think that's true. I mean, just social media.
Yeah, you're a famous person. It's like, uh-oh, what happened? No.
Especially not face-to-face communication. I would say that's been, that's increased a lot.
So how do we? What's the solution for that? Exactly.
Yeah, take your Facebook down if you're planning to teach.
And I think we need to cultivate skills one of the things that Clint has been doing for a long time have been sharing the teaching duties amongst many of the young they may be elected to accept a 12-week assignment, but maybe they can do 2 weeks, just to kind of figure
Yeah, it's a lot.
yeah.
I think having that kind of like testing ground environment too is good.
You got it figured out? All right.
Oh, I have to perform.
I like it.
More
About 2
relaxed,
minutes.
You know.
Oh, I have one.
2 minutes and then we're gonna share.
There's plenty of teachers that have had a background in or gotten education, and so there's like a standard people think, especially in these, just saying, worldly ones, faith only, you know, just those ones where a lot of people went and had degrees that they had to get. So they think that they have to have this standard that they're held to. And so they don't realize Jesus didn't say, you know, before you go into the world, you must get a degree. And, you know, but don't listen to the Pharisees. I know they know it all, they say, but they are not the ones to go with. No, there's none of that. He just says, go and make disciples.
Of that spectrum, I think that's true. But also, I've known like elementary school teachers or high school teachers that feel like they're already teaching and they just can't teach it. So they're kind of whether it's burnout or just feeling like I don't want to do it.
I think that way with them. Yeah, we'd love to have the uncomfortable classroom, but
It's hard to get there on
it's hard to,
time.
it's hard to just get there because you have so many responsibilities, and to be able to have 30 minutes where you're not chasing a child or children a couple times a week is, yeah, exactly.
Well, it's also, I think, having more of that non-lifetime commitment is nice because, like, Bible school teachers need to be learning the Bible too, so they can teach it, so they can't spend all their time teaching.
Yep.
And if you only have so many opportunities a week, if you can just have Bible class or whatever.
Okay, so let's share.
Great
Y'all
teacher is Jesus.
came up with a
They
list
just
in
need
a
to
hurry. In
learn
fact,
from the
several
great
of you
teacher.
listed more than
Just from
3,
his Bible.
which is probably good, because the way we're going to do this is I'm going to ask each table to share one, and we'll go around the room until we have your list exhausted. And it's fairly common that when someone says, oh, here's a reason, the table over here is going to go, oh, we had that one. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, if you had 4 or 5, then you're going to be okay. So we'll start here, and we'll go down this way and come back, and we'll try to rotate who gets to go first. But give me one reason why people don't want to teach.
Fear of public speaking.
See, going first could be a good thing.
You know, it's so true. It's the number one fear. People are more afraid of public speaking than they are death.
Yep.
Isn't that funny? I had a guy one time talk about afraid of public speaking. He came up to me and he said, do I have to be able to lead a public prayer to go to heaven? I was like, where did you hear such a thing? But see, in his mind, he was so terrified to speak publicly. And I'm thinking, you close your eyes, you don't see anybody. But see, in his mind, it's a fearful thing. And to stand in front of people and speak can be a very terrifying thing. And so that fear of public speaking oftentimes keeps people from teaching. Give me another reason.
I don't have time to prepare.
No time to prepare. Anybody in this room not busy? You know, it is crazy the world we live in that we are so busy. We are so busy. And if it's not work, it's family or some other activity. I mean, I'll tell you, we live right next door to 4 of our grandchildren, and they're all athletes. So they're either playing basketball or volleyball or soccer or something. And so 2 or 3 nights a week when I get to be at home, we're going to the gym. I mean, there's just so little time to be able to prepare. So I get that. We are busy, and it makes it very difficult. Give me another reason back there.
How to prepare a structured class.
Okay. So are you saying they don't know how, or?
Yeah, I guess.
He wasn't real prepared for
That was good.
Yeah, they don't know how to prepare. I'm not going to. I didn't realize we were going to have 40 people. When I have smaller groups and we talk about the need for teachers and congregations, I'll usually ask this question. I'll say, "What did you do for a living?" And I'll go around the room and I'll have everybody tell about what they did for a living. And you know what's interesting, or what they did before they retired. But you know what's interesting to me, in all the years that I've done this with congregations, I don't know that I can remember a single time when there was more than one or two people that had any kind of a teaching background, that they were teachers in school or a college or something of that nature. And I'm like, you know, in the church, we've kind of done this disservice to people that we want them to teach, yet they have no training. They don't know how to prepare a class. We're just going through this with the church at Bayside in Virginia where we attend. And one of the elders there asked me and my son-in-law if we would prepare a workshop. He's going to do one on how to study the Bible, and he wants me to do one on how to teach. And I'm like, you know, that's going to be a good thing. And he's like, but we want you to do it in 4 hours. I'm like, you know, that's not going to work. You can't do in 4 hours what you need for a lot of times years for people to learn how to teach. And yet imagine the difference if we had an ongoing class every week to where there was the opportunity to learn how to teach. In all of those congregations where that's come up, I've asked how many of you in the congregation, how many of you, if you were given the opportunity to take a class to learn how to teach, that you'd be willing to do that, to take that course if it was a year long or 18 months. And almost every single time, everybody raises their hand and says, I'd love to take a class to learn how to teach. But we just don't offer that. It's like when people become Christians, we give them a few years, and then we're kind of like, we expect them to be in a classroom teaching. And it's not going to happen. It just doesn't. And it's consistent. All right, good. What'd y'all come up with? Give me another reason.
You're the writer. I never the
So far, all the others.
He's just old.
Just old. Teachers are held to stricter standards.
Ah, okay.
We're okay. We have more than just the one.
And that is true. I'm not going to argue with Scripture. It is true. Do not many of you be teachers, knowing that you shall incur a stricter judgment. I get that. But you know what? I also believe in God's grace. And I believe that God is going to be gracious to us while we're learning how to do that. Are we going to make mistakes? Yeah, all of us do. I make mistakes teaching all the time. And I've been doing it for years. And I would like to think that God is going to show grace in those areas where I don't get it right. I realize that we're going to be held to a stricter judgment. Sometimes I think there's a double edge here. I think on one side, there's that idea that's an excuse for me not to. And then on the other side, I think it's legitimately that we carry this burden around that I'm just afraid of making this mistake because if I do, I'm going to go to hell because I didn't teach it right. And we need to also temper that with God's grace because He's going to give us grace while we're learning. Now, I think there's a difference between our learning and intentionally trying to lead people astray. Obviously, there's a difference in those two things. But yeah, I think a lot of times people don't want to teach because they feel that responsibility. They're going to be held to a stricter standard. And that's also true in the people who are watching them.
That's right.
Because people are watching and they're measuring the life of the individual by what they hear them teaching. And so there's also that part of it that's very, very difficult. Give me another reason here.
They feel unqualified.
Ah, yeah. Unqualified. It's kind of the way Moses was, wasn't it? Who am I, Lord, that I should lead this great people? I think it's true that sometimes we feel unqualified. And I will say, I think some people it's not their gift, and that's okay too. We shouldn't try to guilt people into teaching a class if it's not their gift. But I would also like to encourage people that whether you think it's your gift or not your gift, you ought to at least try it to see. Because a lot of times gifts can be developed if we practice them and if we're taught how to do them. But I think a lot of times being unqualified or feeling unqualified can hinder someone from wanting to teach a class. Give me another reason here.
About the only one you guys haven't talked about is we just feel like there's less face-to-face communication in our world, and so it makes that face-to-face communication a little more cumbersome.
Okay. It is sure different, isn't it? When you got to look somebody in the face and you got to talk to them. I mean, it is different. It's so much easier when we just take out our cell phone. We had a group of high school students from Greenbrier, Arkansas, when we were living in Denver, and they came for their spring break in March, and it snowed 18 inches. They got there, and the next day when they woke up, there was 18 inches of snow on the ground. They were going nowhere. So we had 17 teenagers laying all over our house. And it just cracked me up that they're sitting across the table from each other, texting each other.
Oh, wow.
I said, y'all know how to use words? You know, like speak? You speak English? You know? But they say, oh no, it's just an easier text. I'm like, just talk. But sometimes talking to people face to face is a little more difficult. So next time we're going to start on this side so nobody gets to take your answers first.
Yeah,
And
we had
we'll
a
work our way around this one. Let's come back around. Anything we don't have up here on your list?
One we had was, I don't feel creative enough. That's probably the how-to, maybe.
Okay. Not creative? Sure. Y'all have another one that we don't have?
May tag on to another one. A person may say I'm an introvert.
Well, they're good at public speaking, actually.
That may be
There's
the
so many
face-to-face
introverts.
You know, I'm an introvert.
Yeah, I knew.
I am
I'm
a
kidding, I
major
didn't know that.
introvert. See, I don't mind being around people I know. People that I know are Christians but you put me in an airport, I'm not the guy that's going to go up, hey, dude, how are you? Tell me your name. What's going on in your world? That is not me. I'm going to be sitting in a corner with my laptop or my earbuds on. And, I got on the plane. Bless his heart. He's probably a really nice guy. But I got on the plane in Norfolk, and we were coming to Denver. And as soon as I sat down, this guy wanted to start a conversation. And I thought, please no, Lord. And he turned to talk to the person next to him on the other side, and I put the earbuds in. And so I was able to work while he was chatting up with the other person. So, but yeah, I don't know if I would be, maybe I'm an extra introvert. I don't know how that works.
Well, you got a lot of hours to get back home, so
Yeah.
God's gonna challenge you.
So, it's just interesting. But I'm very uncomfortable when it comes to talking to people I do not know, face to face. Stand in front of people and talk, I can do that. But interacting, it's different. You have anything we don't have up here?
I said lack of confidence.
Oh, yeah. Lack of confidence. I'm going to talk about that Sunday morning in the Bible class on a little different vein, but the idea is confidence and where our confidence comes from. Y'all have something else we don't have up here?
Nita had one. You had a good example that haven't brought up yet.
No, the one about the person in the room knows more than you do. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That you don't want to teach because sister so-and-so knows way more than you do.
Yeah.
It's just the sisters that know more.
Others know more.
Oh.
Y'all know who Danny Petrillo is.
Oh, yeah.
There was never a time. I taught at Bear Valley for 8 years. There was never a single time that I spoke either at a lectureship or in chapel or anywhere else, that when he was in the room, I did not want to speak. I mean, there's just something about that. I mean, fear to some degree, but the fact that there are others who know more, that's just very intimidating. And a lot of times there are people, I mean, you got a Denny Petrillo, or now think about Bear Valley. You got Dave Chamberlain, you got Wayne Berger, you've got Denny Petrillo, you've got Mike Height, you've got all these guys sitting in the room. What are you going to say to them? I'm like, y'all get up and speak and I'll take notes. So, y'all have anything we don't have up here?
Well, it's a different take on fear of criticism.
Oh, yeah. Nobody likes to be criticized. We all like praise, but it's tough to have criticism. What you got?
Looking at that face-to-face, probably more than me looking out at the audience is knowing they're looking at me.
I was looking back to see if you were looking back to see if I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me. Yeah, that is so true. A lot of eyes. Y'all have anything we don't have?
We also said that because of like the lifelong commitment, sometimes it feels like you can't get the education you need to continue being able to teach effectively. You know, if you have a lifelong commitment to teach every Sunday morning, you're not going to be able to like spread your wings and learn more, you know?
Yeah. I would love to see a congregation that would have, you know, like a 2 or 3 year type of setup to where every class that was being taught, that the person teaching only had to teach 1 quarter every 2 years or one every 3 years.
Amen.
That there were that many teachers that they could rotate that through so that nobody felt like they got burned out teaching all the time, and they were able to rotate those in. That would take a lot of work, a lot of developing, preparing people with what they need to teach. Yes.
But the scripture says, like, many hands make light work.
Yeah.
And I think that holds true in this.
Yeah.
I mean, if we all do a little, then nobody has to do a lot.
Well, just imagine if you had a team. You know, for example, like if you, I don't know what your age group breakdown is here, but let's just say, for example, your 4th and 5th grade class group. And what if you had a team of about 8 or 12 different people that were willing to work as a team at developing what that material looked like, teaching that material, rotating that around, and constantly working together to do that? That would be an awesome setup, wouldn't it? And that's true for every age level. You should have a team of people that's their focus. That's, you know, if people were to ask me, would you teach Revelation? I'm like, no. I don't want to teach Revelation, and I don't want to teach Isaiah either. Don't give me 13 weeks and say we need you to teach Isaiah. That ain't happening. I mean, but you know, what I like to teach is leadership. You know, let me teach leadership, and I don't mind teaching it every quarter. I've got that much material. But the thing is, if people were able to teach what they loved the most, and they got to spend the rest of the quarters of that year and the next year honing and redeveloping and making it better, just that area they love to teach, how cool would that be for a congregation? That way every student that sits in every class knows that the teacher they have is passionate about the subject they're teaching. But we don't do that, but we need to. Okay, let's
Yeah. So it's great to have a few ministers here, and so we're just kind of blessed with that. Not everyone has that opportunity. But Richard, I think you took off for like a month or something. Richard, Lori, they took off, and Clint took over, and Jared, I want to say. And when Richard came back, I mean, he was able to reflect and then come back and deliver a sermon, and the full front was taken. All the pews with the invitation being said. Yeah. There was no room left. My mom and I were looking for Kleenex because we sat right up there.
Richard, maybe you take off more.
I know, but wait, no, I'm just kidding.
I don't know what she's saying.
The balance of taking some time and coming back. We just want to send him away. No, I'm just saying more than one teacher, so they have some time to reflect a little and offer an even better like more up
You
there.
know, we don't do sabbaticals in the Church of Christ. Denominational people, they do sabbaticals. And I went to school at Fuller, and some of the other students I was in class with, they were like, oh yeah, we got a 6-month sabbatical. I'm like, what?
Oh no. Oh,
But
no,
once they
that's way
explain
too
it,
long.
it's a little different. But the whole purpose of it is to recharge, to give you a chance to grow, because you're constantly pouring out. When you're in full-time ministry, you're constantly pouring out. And if you don't ever get a chance to fill that bucket back up, it doesn't take long, you get burned out. And it's the same with anybody who's teaching, period. They get burned out. And so it's very important. So let's talk for a second about what's the solution? What did you come up with as a solution to address these things, to help change it? We're going to start with y'all.
Well, the first one we talked about, and you actually said it when we were talking about why do you, stricter judgment, we said grace, and you said it when we were talking about stricter judgment. So we need to offer grace. And accept the grace of God too. Know that we're not going to be judged.
Yeah.
His grace is going to
That's
cover
such a
us.
good thing, to know God's grace and to extend grace to each other. Give me another solution.
Yeah, I think you already mentioned it as well. Share the load, have co-teachers or a team.
Okay. It makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Start small.
Start small. Yeah. Very good. Richard, what'd y'all come up with?
Have a workshop.
Oh, instant credit. No, just kidding.
Well, I hope y'all know that I am trying to model exactly what y'all are going to be learning tomorrow to do. But yeah, have a workshop. There you go. And have them frequently. I'll come back whenever you want me to. No. But have different people come in that do those kinds of things. Give me another one here. What was your solution?
When someone says they don't know enough, give a teacher the okay to say, I don't know, because you're fearful of someone asking a question that you don't know.
Ah, yeah. I don't know in our culture where that started, this idea that we feel like we've got to have an answer for every question. But we do. We have that pressure of feeling like, I just got to know the answer to every question. If somebody asks a question and I don't know the answer to, they just feel so intimidated by that. But it's okay to say, I don't know.
But I'll find out.
But I'll find out, or at least try to.
Oh,
And you know, the
that's
funny
a good.
thing is,
That's
is
a good question. Let me find out the answer.
Yeah.
That's the one I heard. It's a good question.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good question. For me, the sad reality is the older I get, the less I know. I mean, I heard the story told one time about Roy Lanier Sr. that somebody came in and asked him a question. He said, I wish you'd asked me that 25 years ago when I knew all the answers. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. You know, I wish, my kids ask me questions, my grandkids ask me questions, and I'm like, man, I wish you'd asked me that a long time ago. But I have no way of knowing now. But anyway. Yeah.
Start young and then you're not afraid because you think you know all the answers.
Yeah.
But
Start young. Have we ever thought about allowing some of our younger people to have that opportunity to teach and to guide them in that process? I heard y'all talking about some kind of a mentoring. Were y'all talking about a mentoring? Is that you?
Is it leadership and training?
No, it wasn't leadership.
Is
It was more teaching, wasn't it? Kind of mentoring.
For ladies class.
For ladies class, okay. And that would work for the men as well, but to have some kind of mentoring type program where they don't feel like, okay, here's the curriculum. Good luck.
Start off as an assistant, yeah.
Yeah, start off and really it's not like, okay, next week I'm going to give you the whole class. No, let them talk for 5 minutes. Give them 5 minutes to teach until they're comfortable teaching 5 minutes. And then give them 10 minutes, kind of gradually start small, build up. All those things are just so helpful if we would do that. So let's talk for a little bit here about effective teaching. Because effective teaching is all about gaining and maintaining people's attention. It's not very effective if people are I mean, you can tell when people are not paying attention. I mean, it doesn't take long. And I'll tell you, as a teacher, the challenge is that when we start noticing that, we have a tendency to want to get louder and we want to get more forceful. And it's like, okay, that's not helping the situation. But effective teaching is about gaining and maintaining attention. So I want you to think about this. You look at this picture, you see students who are engaged, and here you see students who are disengaged. But I'd like for you to share, just for a moment, what stands out as different between these two pictures to you?
They're participating in the top one.
Okay, they're participating in the top one.
One of them looks like they're asking, and the other ones are being talked to.
Okay, so it looks like the ones are asking, the other's being talked to. What'd you start saying?
Facing each other.
Oh, they're facing each other. Notice the difference. The structure of the classroom is going to make a huge difference in whether your students are engaged or not engaged. When we set up our classrooms in that, theater style seating, I don't know why we do this, but I do know why we do it. But anyway, the structure of our auditoriums makes it so challenging to keep people engaged because it's like everything is from the front. There's never this sitting around a table, talking, working on, discussing, studying, doing those kinds of things. And in our Bible classes, when we set them up like that, and the older our kids become, the more it is structured like this. And the less engaged they become. So if we could take the time to step back and say, okay, how can we restructure the classroom so that we have students engaged in learning and participating in that learning process? I mean, when you look at that top picture, they are all involved. One of the things that I try to do is I always try to get 100% participation out of every class I teach. And I do it. I've already got 100% tonight. Everybody in this room has already participated by saying something at their table. Isn't that what we want? I mean, we want everybody engaged. And the way to do that is by having them at their tables working on things together. I mentioned earlier this idea of application. We're going to spend a lot more time talking about this tomorrow. But effective teaching has to have application. If there is not application, it's not effective. It's just information. And we have in the past, and I'm not saying here because I don't know about here, but in congregations that I've been affiliated with and a part of, and their educational programs, it's the hardest part, is the application. I mean, it's easy to give information, but how do I do that? I'll never forget, I was teaching a class on sermon preparation and presentation at Bear Valley, and we spent a lot of time talking about application. And so one of the guys in the class had that text of scripture about be angry and do not sin. And so anyway, he got up and he was talking about, he used to be a truck driver. And he said that one of the things that helped him when it came to dealing with anger was that when somebody cut him off in traffic, or when someone honked at him, or whatever it was, he said, I learned to sing, angry words, oh let them never, from the tongue unbridled slip. So he sang the song in the lesson. But he was teaching us how to do this when we get angry. And so I just thought, it doesn't take a lot. We don't have to give people a 6-point bullet list of here's how you do this. But we do have to give them some ideas of how to do it. Now, here's the challenge when it comes to, especially preaching, and Richard will tell you this, I'm sure Jared and Clint will as well. The challenge when you're preaching is you've got people that range from this age to this age. And what applies to this younger group will not apply to an older group, and vice versa. People who are single, it's not going to apply the same way as those who are married. And it's not young couples, it's not going to apply the same way as those who have kids. It's all different. And so when you're trying to give a lesson, you try to make application of that lesson, it's hard. That's why it's so important in our Bible classes that they are age appropriate and that we're giving application for that age group. How do they do this? Because if they learn how to do it and you share with them how to do it, then there's a good chance they will. But again, it shouldn't be more than one thing. One thing. What can I do to help me apply this lesson? What is that one thing? And really show them how to do it. And if they get that, it'll change their life. So application is very important. Participation is not always about raising your hands, but that's the only slide I could find that seemed to fit. But the idea is you want people participating, and you do that in a lot of different ways. But certainly you want people involved in participating in the class. I love this picture. It's probably one of my favorites of all my slides. Is effective teaching is about holding interest. How do you hold people's interest? I was talking to a friend of mine in Arkansas. He's one of the few people that I talk to almost every day from the congregation there at Greenbrier where I used to preach years ago. And he was telling me that there's only been a few people in his life that he really could sit and listen to teach or preach for hours. And he said that there was one particular guy that he's an appraiser, and he was in farming. I forget what it was. He was a farm bureau guy. Anyway, he went to this lecture, and this guy started off by telling his story about how he went to prison and how all of that kind of played out in his life. He said the minute he got up and told that, he had everybody's attention. And from that point on, he said, I could have listened to him the rest of the day. Holding people's interest can be very challenging, especially if we're just giving bullet points or if we're just giving information. It's about the stories. Telling the stories that connect the scripture from 1st century to 21st century. And how do we do that? Isn't it interesting that's what Jesus did? Jesus told stories. Whether that was sowers or merchants finding pearl in the field. I mean, he told stories. We call them parables, but he told stories. And people resonated with those stories. Now, I'll recommend a book to you that if you get a chance to get it, by Dan and Chip Heath. It's called Made to Stick: Why Some Stories Stick and Others Don't. And you know, the book starts off by telling this story about a guy who went to a bar and he met this girl and he bought her a drink. And next thing he does is he wakes up in a tub of ice with a phone sitting next to him and a note that says, call 911. So he called, told him the situation, and they told him, don't move. He had been a victim of a kidney harvesting ring that knocked him out, cut a kidney out, and left him in a tub of ice so that when he woke up, he'd call somebody that could help him.
Whoa.
Now, the next story they told in that book, I can't tell you the details of it because all it was is something about some story in the newspaper that was buried 4 pages deep, and I can't even tell you what the story was about because it was so dull. But you see, you'll probably not forget that kidney harvesting story. Those things stick. And if we can start to do that when we're in our classes, we can hold people's interest. Or you can just put a cookie in front of them. However it is that works. There has to be a method. In your teaching, there has to be a method to move people from where they are to where you want them to be. So there's a process that's involved in that. It's structure. Somebody talked about earlier the idea of not knowing how to prepare, not knowing the structure or to prepare a structured lesson. But don't allow the structure sometimes to distract from getting people to where they need to be, because people learn differently, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. There are 4 types of learners. You know, it's very interesting. I wasn't sure I'd have audio. I started to bring some video clips to show, but I wasn't sure I'd have audio, so I left them out. But audio is a very powerful way to show some things if you can use it in the classroom. But there are 4 types of learners. The first learner is the one who's asking the question, why? And maybe some of you are asking that question. It's like, why am I here? some learners are going to ask that question. They're going to be sitting in a Bible class, they're trying to, why am I here? Why do I need this? And I don't know if you're thinking that or not, or if you thought that when the announcement was made about this class. Why do I need this? Some of you sent in those learning needs and resource assessment forms. Some of you did not. I'll not name who. But some of you sent those in. It was fascinating to me. Some of you have been teaching for 30 and 40 years. And I would tend to think, why do I need this? There are some people who are asking those questions. And so you have to motivate them because you know they want to know why. You've got to motivate them. Now, our younger people are always asking this question. They're challenging everything we do and everything we say in the church today. Why do we do it this way? Why are we doing it this night? Y'all have a Wednesday night Bible class? Yep. What's your attendance on Sunday morning? 3:30. What's your attendance on Wednesday night?
170.
170. So about half. That's pretty common, 50%. I met with a congregation one time, and I noticed that their attendance on Wednesday night was about 30%. And so I asked them why that was. And they said, well, we've got this family that their son, he's in golf, and they have practice on Wednesday night, so they take him down there for that. And this family, their daughter's in some school thing here, and they take her to that. And they went through all this stuff. I asked them, if you found out that if you changed from Wednesday night to Thursday night at a different time, that you could get 75% of your people to come back, would you make that change? And they said no.
Oh, wow.
And I get the same reaction. Every time I tell that story, I get the same reaction. And it's a true story. You want to know the reason he gave? We've always met on Wednesday night. And if people are spiritual, they'll make the sacrifice.
I figured.
I thought, that's what's killing us. That is killing us. Our young people are asking, why? I mean, have we ever thought about maybe changing the night and time? Would it be more effective? I don't know. It may not be. But we ought to at least be willing to entertain the question to see, because how would we find out? How would you find out? Could be you try it.
We ask a survey or something.
Ask people. Is there a night that would be better for you to come than Wednesday night at 7 o'clock or whatever time you meet? But people are asking why, or young people are asking why, and sometimes we need to stop and just consider, maybe we need to entertain how we can motivate them. Are we telling them why we do what we do, maybe even when we do it, and the way in which we do it? The second type of learner is those who are asking what. They're wanting to know what information is there and what do I need to know from all of this. And so the idea is you have to inform them. There are some people that are just looking for the information. I just need the information. I need to know, how do I get from here to there? So tell me the information. And so they're wanting to know what. Then there are those who want to know how. And those type of learners are wanting to know, how does this affect me? How does it affect my work? And so as a result, we've got to coach them. We've got to help them learn how to apply the things that we have been talking about. And then there are those who are asking, what if? So what if I get it? What if I actually do what you're telling me to do? What's going to happen? And so we have to evaluate their progress and help them see that this is what will happen if you do this. You know, it's funny. Years ago, I read a book by Andy Stanley called Communicating for Change. And one of the things he talked about in there was the importance of motivating people at the end of the lesson by telling them how things will be different if they do this. If you will do this, how will your life be different? And that's motivating people. And there are learners that's what they are looking for. Now, in addition to these types of learners, there are 7 styles of learning. So I want to share with you those 7 styles. You can see this graph here, the way that lays out. But I want to look at each one of them just briefly. The first one is visual. These are spatial people. They've got to see it. Now, seeing it involves sometimes PowerPoint, Sometimes it's a picture. People see a picture and they connect with the picture. Sometimes they need to see it in front of them. Maybe they need to see a person actually do it. You know, growing up, my dad tried to teach me how to be an electrician. Now, he was a preacher, but he was an electrician on the side. And so he would take me with him on jobs because he wanted me to learn how to do that. He said, this will be something to help you all your life. I said, Dad, I don't want to learn that. But he always kept pushing me. But the way he taught me was watching him do it. He wouldn't just say, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that. He would say, watch, I'll show you. And so watching, it was a visual way of learning. And so sometimes people are visual. Obviously, there are those who are oral. That is, they're auditory learners. They need to hear it. Now, obviously, you know that when you combine seeing with hearing, what is said and heard will last longer than if they just hear it or if they just see it. And of course, the more pieces that you can add to this, the more likely it is that what you're wanting them to learn will stick with them. But some people are very much visual learners. Some people are auditory learners. They need to hear, and they would rather listen. My son-in-law will listen to podcasts all day long while he's working. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I can't just listen to it. I like to watch a visual. Go to YouTube and watch the podcast because I like to see the people involved in talking and listening to it that way. So it's not just listening, but some people, they can learn just by listening. Some are verbal. That is, that they are linguistic. They have to say it. Now, when I taught homiletics, preaching and practicing and presentation, I always required the students to practice their lesson out loud at least 3 times before they gave the lesson. Now, they didn't understand why, because a lot of times what people do when they're preparing for a sermon or a class, they'll take their notes and they'll sit here and they'll just read over them. Okay, I got this. And they're trying to memorize it by just looking at it and reading it. And I'm like, the best way that you can do that is say it. Say it out loud. Practice it. I used to, when I was in full-time preaching, literally, I would write my sermons the Thursday and Friday, 9 days before I was going to give it. And then starting that next week, every morning, I got up in the pulpit just like there was a crowd there, and I preached both those sermons every single day. So that when Sunday rolled around, I gave it. I mean, it was like autopilot for me. And there were times it needed to be because of things that were going on. And so that was just me. Not everybody's that way. Not everybody's that type of learner. But for me, saying it was super helpful to me for remembering what it was I wanted to say. It also helped me hone down and realize that that sermon needed to be made into 2 or 3 because it was going to be an hour and a half if I didn't. That's the other thing that happens when we just look at it. We can read it on a paper in 5 minutes and we think, oh yeah, I got that. That's not going to be very long. And then we talk for 25. And then we don't even realize that's how long it was. So saying it out loud is very important. Some people are logical learners. That is very mathematical in their thinking. They have to reason with it. They've got to spend some time reasoning, thinking it through. Does it make sense? Logically speaking, does it make sense? I'm working with a guy that's a retired colonel in the Air Force, and we're developing material on emotional intelligence that he's developing it to teach in the government setting. I'm trying to develop some things that we can use in the church because it's very important to have emotionally healthy leaders. And the thing that's been interesting about this is that both of us continue to talk about going through the material because it needs to flow. If it doesn't logically flow for me, it's hard to teach it. And so I need there to be that logical flow. And so a lot of times we're reasoning through all of that. Some are social learners. That is, that they are interpersonal. They're extroverts. And so they like to study the material together. I'll never forget the first time I came up to finals at Bear Valley, our first quarter, and we had finals. The guys were like, gonna stay up with us tonight, all night, we're gonna cram for this final. I'm like, no thanks. But see, that's the way they learn. They study together in a group, challenging each other, questioning each other. They're like, we got a pot of coffee on. I said, I don't drink coffee. They said, oh, you will before you get out of here. I'm like, not likely, but anyway. Some people are social. They really like to learn together in a group. And you'll see this all over colleges, sometimes in high schools, but college campuses, they have those study groups because some people are very interpersonal in the way that they learn. They like to study together. And then there are those that are solitary. They're the introverts. They're intrapersonal. They need to study it alone. Now, I'll tell you, for me personally, that's the best for me. I'd rather take a book and sit down and read the book and take some notes from that book and then talk about that, and that's how I learn. But not everybody's that way. And so we have to realize there are different learning styles. And so it's very good if you can incorporate all of that. If you can get people to work together in a group and then give them things to work on separately, on their own, to study those things privately, and then come back together and share what they've learned in that way. And then this one is the most important one for you to remember. It is the kinesthetic way of learning, and that is doing. Now, I will tell you right now that adults learn best by doing. Not by listening, not by saying, not by hearing, but by doing. If you want adults to learn, the number one way, I'm not saying those other pieces don't factor in, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is the most important way for adults to learn is by doing. You got to give them something to do. Tomorrow you're going to get a lot of stuff to do as we're going to work through a number of different pieces in a similar way that we did tonight with the first piece here on why people don't teach. If you don't know who David Kolb is, David Kolb's experiential learning cycle looks like this. And let me kind of explain the quadrants and kind of the way this works. Concrete experience is where he started. Sometimes, and the idea of the concrete experience is the idea of a new experience, or it's interpreting an old experience in a new way. And so the individual in this learning cycle experiences something new. And then the second part of that is reflective observation. So now they are thinking about this new experience or this reinterpreting or interpreting an old experience in a new way. So now they're reflecting on that as to what does that mean? So I've had this experience, so what does that mean for me? And then you come down here to this abstract conceptualization. Now I'm going to be thinking differently, or I'm going to construct in some way new ideas based upon that experience and the observation. Once I have reflected on that, I'm starting to have new ways of thinking, and I'm going to construct some new ideas based upon that. And then active experimentation is now I'm going to do something with it. Now that I've had this new experience, I've reflected on it, what it means, and I've had the opportunity to really construct some new ideas as to what that might look like in my life. Now I apply that. I start doing that. Now, the creative learner is the diverging learner, is the one who wants that experience, that new experience, with the reflective observation. And you can see there's the perception and the processing that takes place in that, and it's done usually by discussion. So someone comes along, they introduce a new idea to you, and you're like, oh, I haven't thought of that before. That's really good. I need to reflect on that some, think about that. And so there are some people, they just thrive on that. You remember that in Acts chapter 17, where Paul was in Athens, where they were always meeting there at Mars Hill to talk about new things. Well, Paul gave them something new to think about called the resurrection. And so, but that's the way some creative learners, that's the way they are. They want that experience, that new, something new that they haven't thought of, and then they're going to reflect on that. Then the intellectual learner, the one that's assimilating this, through that interactive reference, they're taking what they've reflected on, but they really like the idea of how do I now construct this? How do I take this thing that I've reflected on? I know what it means now. So how do I construct something from that? So that's the intellectual. The practical learner, the converging, is the one who likes putting the pieces of the puzzle together. It's a mystery. I got to figure out, how do I apply this in my life now that I've got this new stuff? And then, of course, the social is the role play and design between the concrete experience and the idea of the application of it. And so that was his cycle. And obviously, you can see a lot of different ways that apply to the 4 that we talked about earlier. But I want to tell you about 3 different methods of teaching, and then I've got an assignment for you to work on again at your table as we kind of near closing out tonight. There is the teacher-centered method, and you can see from the structure of the classroom that this method is all geared towards the person at the front. And so everybody is focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's listening to what the teacher has to say. I'm not saying it's bad. Please don't misunderstand me. There are some times where information has to be given to a student in order for them to get that new idea, that new experience in something that they've never done before or heard before. And then there is content-centered. Now, I know we need it, but I'll just tell you right now, my least favorite is curriculum. We get curriculum from different places, and it's always structured in a 13-week quarter, and it's like we rarely go on a deep dive into Scripture. We're just water skiing across the top through these curriculum, or curriculi, I don't know what the plural is of that, but the idea is it's content-centered. It's not really on the teacher as much as, how many times have you heard people say this? Excuse me, we just got to get through this lesson. I just got to get through all this material. I'll tell you the common phrase that was used at Bear Valley, and I hear at Sunset, is, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And I'm like, you can't. Now you can get up there and you can lecture all day long, and you can give people all that information, but they ain't getting it. They might get a dribble of water here, a dribble of water there, but when you're trying to drink from a fire hose, you're not getting a drink. It is just... That's content-centered. And then there is learning-centered. Learning-centered is what's going to take place when people work together. And that's what y'all are going to do mostly tomorrow. So what is the goal of our teaching? In your groups, I want you to take the next few minutes to think about how you'd answer that question. So come up with 2 or 3 ideas, or maybe 1. I don't care how you want to do that, but 1 or 2 ideas, maybe 3, as to what is the goal of our teaching. So y'all talk about that, and then we're going to share. I'm going to figure out a way to erase all this up here, and then we're going to share.
I was thinking of 1 Timothy 1:5. The goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart, and good conscience, and a sincere faith. Yeah, it seems like a pretty good goal. Pretty straightforward.
Where's Timothy 3:5?
No, 1:5.
I think the other thing, for me, it's to be appropriate to my stage in my Christianity. You know, like, one of the scriptures, I can't find it, but talks about milk only. You know, that we need to move on to the business of wages matters. Yeah.
Growth, really.
Yeah.
Growth to where you're at.
From where you were starting at to where you'd like to be someday. Not that you ever attain, but that you're continuing to grow.
Edification, building each other up. Of course, because the teaching is to Christians that are continuously coming. The spreading the gospel is the beginning stage, and when they're a Christian, they're wanting to be taught now. It's kind of like someone interested in going to school, you know, like, all right, I want to do that. I need to know what in the world I'm going to be doing. So, all right, well, let's get you in front of a teacher or teachers plural. So ours is edification, building each other up. Like oh my goodness. That's why Hebrews 10 covers, you know, why we're supposed to be meeting together, you know, to encourage each other. And so teaching is also encouragement too.
Steve Coleman?
What came to my mind is just passing on what I know to the next person.
In his notes, he said, I'm just trying to stay awake now, so I'm typing everything Dave's saying. Dave Chamber?
Yeah, I tell you what, of course, it's so hard.
So kind of what you said, that he literally, whatever place we're at, is what they get us to the next level. So
You know, when I talk about the subject of that, people in that
And that's the thing, Dave's in his 80s. I know when I read even talking out loud, you gotta give people a chance to catch up, you know? And so when you pause, while they're typing, you say,
He had my second year, we had some, I remember what all happened.
it edifies us.
He ended up teaching
That's the goal. That's what it should do.
And then it's duplicating the teacher, because those that aren't currently in that position of needing the teaching themselves, they heard it so they could teach somebody that they need or know and that just couldn't make it. Like, oh yeah, so-and-so just mentioned this. You're the one I needed to tell, or you're the one that needed to hear it through me, you know? I also direction, like directing people's minds. So we're all over the place all week long, so we need our mind directed back where it belongs. You know?
I was thinking too, as a teacher, I think about that I need to, I would like to give the learners something that they can apply to their lives. As a teacher, that's kind of a goal I have. You know, whether they apply it or not is their decision. But I'm giving them not just information, but I'm giving them the tool or whatever, the application, so the opportunity to apply it to their lives. So that it can make a difference for them, you know.
Oh yeah, that's true. There's something I'm looking into, which is pretty creative. It's like an Airbnb thing where the person's kind of taught on how to get hold of landlords and help them create their own Airbnb. And the ones that are running the teaching of the classes, the ones who are running the teaching, they're selling it like a school, and they said, well, we did wrong here, wrong there, so this is going to teach you guys exactly so you don't mess up where we
Let's share, because all of y'all have many answers. Some of you have the same answers, which is good. That's a positive thing. So we'll start at the back and work to the front this time.
We have so many.
On the right side, give me one. What is the goal of our teaching?
It'll sound cliche, but it's to give information that will bring about the transformation. And so it's the idea that if you're using the three different types of teaching methods and engaging the different types of learners, sometimes that change will be small and incremental for people, and sometimes it will be much larger, just depending on where that individual is at that time.
Very good. That was well said.
Okay, I think we're done here.
All right. Mic drop moment, we're done.
We're all transformed. Let's go.
That's good, really good.
Encourage people to think.
All right? Or rethink.
Second opinion.
If you ever get a chance to read Adam Grant's book, Think Again, I'd encourage you to read it. It made me hurt, really. It's one of those kinds of books that when you read it, you're like, why did I read that? Because it really does. How often we think about our lives, we structure our lives when we learn something, you know, either when we're a child, whether it's through education or through experience or something with a parent, whatever that is in our life. Our life is based upon those things that we are taught and things that we experience. And those things that we're taught and we experience become truths in our lives to the point that we almost get to the point we can't think about anything else and won't. And that can be a dangerous place to be. Both sides, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we need to stop and rethink about some things. You know, kind of like the application of James 3:1. Does that exclude grace? You know, what was James really trying to say there about not many of you be teachers? Well, maybe we need to back up and rethink about what James was really trying to say in that context, and how does that apply to us today? Does that mean that nobody should be a teacher? I mean, there literally was a student who came through Bear Valley that dropped out of Bear Valley because he said, I'm learning too much and I don't want to be responsible for it. Now that's a scary thought, isn't it? Instead of, I need to be sharing what I'm learning with others, it's like, I don't want to be responsible for all that knowledge. And I'm like, okay. But sometimes we just need to back up and rethink. Give me another one.
We were thinking of 1 Timothy 1:5, but the goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith.
Love.
That's cheating.
I know, right? Love from a pure heart, good conscience,
and sincere faith.
So you asked the great teacher. You read what he had to say.
I wondered if somebody would come up with that. I always love that text. Because Paul does. He says the goal of our instruction is this. You know? How would you summarize that? But by that, right? I mean, the goal is love from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. Those are transformational pieces in our life. Give me another goal. What you got?
To share a passion or inspire.
I like that word inspire. I know it's overused a lot, but I like that, inspire. I like being inspired. You know, we talk about inspiration, and obviously we know that biblical inspiration is one thing, but different from what we would understand inspiring people, motivating people. But when I think about Hebrews 10, and he talks about in verse 24 there, how that we are to stimulate one another to love and good works. To me, that's inspiring. You know, we've got to inspire, we've got to excite, we've got to motivate, we've got to encourage, whatever it takes. We've got to do those things that move people to do that. Love from a pure heart, good conscience, sincere faith. Give me another goal.
Some of what we've said kind of fits in all of that, but this is a little bit different, and I think in our classrooms we try to give too much information. So maybe we get back to just try to whet people's appetite.
Is that what you want me to say? Whet their appetite?
Or just entertain people. That's one idea, you know. Go with wet people.
Whet their appetite. You know, of course, I don't know. The people I'm connected to on Facebook, y'all know Wes McAdams, right? I love his little sermon tidbits that he puts out on Facebook. They're just like 1 minute of a sermon. Has the big caps for the closed captioning, I don't even have to hear it. I can just read it, what he's saying sometimes. But the thing I love about that is they're always exciting. They're always encouraging. I mean, and they're inspiring. They whet my appetite. I want to hear more because they share just enough to make you want to go, I want to know more about that. You know, and I try to encourage people that on your website, and again, I haven't visited your website, but I encourage people on the website, that's the kind of stuff that needs to be on your website. Just stuff to whet people's appetite. Just a minute clip of something from the sermon, you know, video and audio so that people can see it, people can hear it, people can read it, whatever it is, and that they're like, I need to go down there and visit. I'd like to know more about that. I was having dinner tonight over here at Dickie's Barbecue. Woo, that was good. And there was this couple that was in front of me. And so I sit down at a table close to them. And he prayed before his meal. And I have always made it a practice that when I hear or I notice somebody who prays before their meal, that I'm going to go up and say something to them. I will get out of my introvert box for that. And so I went up to him. I said, I just want you to know it's very encouraging to me to hear somebody pray before their meal because you don't see that very often. And they said, thank you. And I said, y'all go to church anywhere around here? Not really. Whoa. I was like, well, look, I'm in town. I'm in town over here at the Linder Road Church of Christ. I said, I'll be preaching on Sunday. You should come. Maybe they will. I don't know. But I told them, I said, be great to see you. So, anyway, where did we get to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last one, yeah?
I think we've said just about everything that's been up there, except we've said it maybe in a little bit different way.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Educate, motivate, and activate.
Motivate, activate.
Educate, motivate, activate.
Yeah. That's our education committee's thing, I think.
Anybody have anything to add to that other than those things? Those are good.
Teach people how to study their Bible.
Ah, okay.
How to think for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it fits with all that stuff.
Sandy mentioned about getting it from our lives into the lives of others. You know, once we make the application to our lives, then that will help others or affect others.
Okay. You know, you mentioned something there that I think can be challenging. Teaching people to think for themselves. Is that really the goal of our instruction? Are we teaching them how to think, or are we teaching them what to think? There's a difference in those two things. And again, I'm not speaking for here, I'm just speaking for a lot of my personal experience. That oftentimes what we do, now maybe our goal is to teach them to think for themselves, but in practice what we do is we're just teaching them what to think. And instead of teaching them how to think, teaching people how to think and critical thinking, that's a lost art in our world today. From every educational system all the way up, not just religiously, but every educational system, it is rare to find young people that know how to think critically. They're taught what to think, not how to think. And I have seen it in congregations over and over and over where people are like, just tell me what I need to do. I just want to know what I need to do to get to heaven. I'm like, that's not what this is about. This isn't a checklist of do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and you get your ticket punched. This is not what this is about. That's not what our life on this earth is about. But our lives have to be continually transformed, and the only way they're going to be continually transformed is if we learn how to think for ourselves. Not just doing something because somebody told me to do it, but doing it because I've learned through my own ability to study and read and take what I'm gaining from that and transforming my own life. So, I'll share with you these 4 ideas. These are kind of the 4 main umbrellas. You guys have covered all of them in this list. But a lot of times, our goal for teaching is to strengthen people's current knowledge. And, you know, one of the challenges that I think we face sometimes in the church is this idea is we're going over the same things in the same ways. And and it's not bad that we need to keep reminding people. Peter even talked about that in his letter, about that reminding people and bringing to their remembrance the things Jesus talked about, the Holy Spirit bringing to their remembrance all that he taught them. And it's important to strengthen people's current knowledge. But sometimes if we're not careful, we get in that rut of we're just teaching the same things in the same ways over and over and over and over. We're not challenged ourselves, and we're not challenging others to grow beyond just that milk, if you will, of God's Word. Because it can make us uncomfortable sometimes to challenge ourselves to go beyond that. But certainly, we do need to strengthen our current knowledge. For some, it's about how to effectively communicate that knowledge. And so, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the knowledge that they know and teach them how to communicate that to someone else, which is also a good thing. And then there are those who want to ensure that one learns the knowledge that has been communicated. So, you know, in every Bible class, we want the students to take what we're teaching them, and we want them to learn that and ensure that they have learned it. But ultimately, and I think this is, you know, from the very first reason that was given, or the first goal that was given, and really seen throughout all of them, is our goal is to change people's lives. We want to change their lives to live by the knowledge that has been learned. And if we're not in the business to change lives, we're in the wrong business. Because the goal of teaching is to change people's lives. Now, how can we do that? You know, effective teaching, how do we do that? We talked about all those areas earlier, and those are just the groundwork that we're working on to begin tomorrow. Tomorrow, as we start talking about inspiring passion, we're going to talk about how do you do that? How do you, as a teacher, inspire passion in others? And so you'll work at your tables to talk about how you can do that. We're going to talk about a number of different areas within, even looking at those areas of application. You're going to work at your table to come up with some areas about how to do. I'm going to give you scripture to work on, but how do you do it? I'm not just going to let you find the scripture you want. I'm going to give you something to work on. And so I'll give you a passage of scripture, and y'all will work on how do we do that. The scripture tells us what to do, but how do we do that? What does that look like in the 21st century? So we'll talk about that, and then we're going to move into those areas to where we're going to look at some of those principles of adult learning. And so we'll talk about those. I think there are 12 of them. We're going to spend a little time with each one. And then when we come back, we're going to do those 8 steps of design. And that's where you're going to actually design some material for a class you will teach. So you're going to get to do that tomorrow afternoon. And then we're going to talk about those 4 A's, where you anchor, add, apply, and away, and what that looks like. Questions? What questions you have or thoughts you want to share? Does everything make sense, the direction we're going here?
Oh, that's kind of funny.
Oh. Do what?
Do you want to go first? Not sure who.
I don't know who said what.
I just said it's like a fire hose.
Well, tomorrow, hopefully, the fire hose will come down to a trickle from a garden hose, and we'll be able to get a good drink. But you'll be working on stuff together, and you'll be learning together. And what you walk away with tomorrow afternoon will be some good things that you can apply in your own context of teaching a Bible class. And what was it you said?
It's funny. I was thinking direction, and you said something about the word direction in there. And like every time we're here, Sunday, Wednesday, there's directing us through the lesson. And if we didn't need that specific direction, but someone else did, right? At the very end, we're called to, you know, do you need prayer? Because someone's going to offer direction, right? Yeah. And then, or are you not a Christian yet? So everyone's at their milestone of where they're at, and the full teaching is covering everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. Well, I appreciate very much you being a part of this workshop. And again, I'm so encouraged to see so many of you sign up for and be a part of this. The LNRA that I asked, I think some of you filled out, sent in to me, which is guiding some of the things that we're sharing. You're going to develop one of those tomorrow for your class. And I'll tell you why. This came up with the church there in Virginia Beach where we attend. And they were telling us, that one of the elders was telling me that he wanted me to do this workshop on helping people teach through curriculum. I was like, you probably need to get somebody else for that. So that's not going to be me. And I asked him in the email, I said, have you ever thought about asking what people want to learn? So for those of you, if you didn't see that link to that questionnaire, that's one of the questions I wanted to know is, what do you want to learn from this workshop? Because if we will start designing our classes around teaching people what they want to learn, we'll probably be surprised how many more people come to them. As long as we're just telling them what we want them to learn, don't be surprised that they're really not interested in coming. Because either A, they already know it, or B, they don't want to know it. And so if it's not relevant to them, if it's not something they want to learn, chances are they're not going to be engaged in the class. And so it's very important for us to take the time. So you're going to do that tomorrow. You're going to work on, at your own tables, you're going to work on how to develop that type of a questionnaire for your class. How would you develop that for your class? So be thinking about those things. Be praying about those things tonight. And tomorrow we're going to spend some time working on all those pieces. So you got a lot of things. I'm going to share some stuff with you, but majority of the time you're going to be doing a lot of stuff yourself, working on that. All right. No questions? How about we have a prayer together before we dismiss tonight?